This is
Pound News.
Good morning. It's a historical day in Charleston, South Carolina, as the first fully South Carolina assembled 787 rolls off the assembly line.
And we are here to cover it. International Business Magazine starts now.
Welcome back to our third and most exciting edition of International Business Magazine. I am Taylor Keene.
And I am Brian Bennett. We are extremely excited to be covering the first fully South Carolina assembled edition of the long-awaited Boeing 787.
Lots to get to before we get to the coverage of the 787, which is due to roll off the assembly line in Charleston, South Carolina shortly. Brian will get a chance to sit down with aviation expert Anna Hargis, and we will cover a long-awaited press conference with one of Boeing's executives.
Let's take a look outside at the crowd assembling right now, ready to welcome South Carolina's first 787.
Excitement is growing, and they have every reason to be celebrating.
That's right, Taylor. It is sure to be an eventful and historic day. But they aren't quite ready for me yet, so let's discuss a few items that make this Boeing case quite interesting.
Outsourcing and supply chain management are two topics specifically related to the Boeing 787 story, but we will wait for the experts later to give us more Boeing details.
Can you tell us about the most significant benefits of outsourcing?
Well, sure. Cost, of course, is one of the main considerations. Companies can benefit from the cost savings associated with having fewer facilities in-house manufacturing, economies of scale, lower production costs, and, of course, lower procurement costs. One way to increase your return on equity is to decrease break-even points. Capitalizing on cost savings associated with outsourcing can help to reduce the break-even points and thus increase your return on equity.
Outsourcing also allows companies to focus on their core competencies.
Focusing on core competencies is extremely beneficial to a company's bottom line because it allows them to concentrate on what they do well and produce a superior product for their consumers. Marketing efforts can also be a focus during a time of outsourcing. With a more streamlined manufacturing process, companies can spend more time marketing their products and actually trying to sell them. It really boils down to enhanced products at a lesser price and the ability to allocate more time to marketing and advertising efforts.
But would you say, is it smart to outsource the majority of, say, production and design?
That's tricky. It opens the door for a company to become too dependent on their suppliers. Anna will provide you with real-world examples when you get a chance to sit down with her later, and I think you'll find that was a major concern of Boeing's. Harvard Business Review attributes the struggles and failures to three main points: different objectives, unplanned rivals, and lack of version control. Failure to ensure all parties involved are on the same page is a huge red flag. It could lead to setbacks, which means more time, which means more money. The idea of outsourcing is to save money, not spend more. To operate at a high level of innovation, it is sometimes necessary to seek counsel from parties you wouldn't otherwise associate with. This could cause them to sabotage or steal ideas. Finally, it is important to have communication amongst design teams and manufacturers. If the designers are working on version 2 of the product, but the manufacturers are still working on version 1, there's another costly setback.
But how do businesses protect themselves against becoming too dependent on those suppliers, especially when they are in control of design?
Well, two main ways. One, by managing the flow of goods, and two, by managing the suppliers. And by managing the suppliers, I mean everything from setting expectations to following up when they don't produce what they should. Someone must be checking up and checking in to see how the suppliers are handling the orders and where they are in relation to where they should be.
Okay, but if you had to choose, what would be the most important piece of supply chain management?
That would definitely be managing inventory levels. It's the backbone of the supply chain because it requires managing all parts involved in producing the inventory, and that's not always an easy job. It takes time and resources to ensure a supplier is producing up to the expected quality level, and if defects go unnoticed until one of the last steps, it creates a huge delay in production, increased costs, and too many headaches. Managing the relationship with suppliers and ensuring the proper checklists are in place is crucial to a timely production. When issues do arise, communication is key. Suppliers have to feel comfortable enough to go and address their issues with the company. And in return, companies should have multiple suppliers. That way they protect themselves if a supplier is running late.
Okay, we need to take a quick break, but stay tuned. Much more on outsourcing, supply chain management, and on Boeing's historic day right after the break. International Business Magazine returns in a moment with a special one-on-one interview with aviation expert Anna Hargis.
We were born 100 years ago into a new American century, born with a hunger to fly and a passion to build something better. And what an amazing time it's been. Decade after decade of innovation, inspiration, and wonder. So we say thank you, America, for a century of trust, for the privilege of flying higher and higher together.
Welcome back. Let's take a look over as the folks are preparing for today's press conference.
I am getting word that they're about ready to take the podium, so let's go to that press conference now.
So how do you guys like having a press conference in the fuselage? Cool, huh? So let me introduce myself. My name is Kevin Schwisser, the Senior Vice President of Global Supply Chain Operations with Boeing Company. I want to welcome you all for being to Boeing Charleston for this very historic event. I'm also excited that we are able to have this time to talk about this journey that Boeing has been on for quite a long time now. I'm sure it is a case that will be studied for many years to come. So with that being said, I will open the floor for questions. Yes, please, you were there.
From the reading, in order to remain competitive with competitors such as Airbus, Boeing had the choice of updating previous models, 777 for example, or designing a new aircraft. The goal of either option was to add to the value of both passengers and airlines. Can you discuss this decision-making process that eventually led down to the path of 787?
Great question. Adding value for the customer is paramount for any company, but the process of deciding what to build and when is dependent on many factors, some of which we can discuss. One important point to understand is the decision process is complicated and more than just deciding to select plan A over plan B. Instead, it is a long and complicated process full of risks, speculations, based on studies and industry data. Deciding to launch a new aircraft or a derivative of an existing aircraft is based on numerous key economic factors. Deciding to launch the 787 was a well-formulated and executed detailed analysis of the market, customer, passenger, technologies, and options. Next question, please.
Competitive advantage over rivals is one of huge reasons companies tap into a global sourcing network in order to take advantage of the unique capabilities. At the same time, some level of control is lost as well as a potential loss, or at least sharing the proprietary information that certainly could get back to rivals. Can you discuss what goes into such a decision-making process in general as well as with respect to the 787? With all the new innovation the project brought, was this a harder sell?
Well, using a global space to design and build a product goes deeper than just taking advantage of unique capabilities. Of course, there is a notion that those capabilities can be obtained at a lower price. However, what I believe important is something I said earlier. The workers of those companies recognize the product as something of their own creation. This pride in ownership has a tendency to yield higher quality products and more sales than when dealing with the supplier. The deciding to move work in the global environment opens market opportunities to sell products when the American economy is in a slump. Again, if partner countries are building products, they have greater national pride and see the product as something they have built and not something they have purchased. This notion presents a big advantage in selling products for the company. The loss of control was minimized with the placement of many company experts at each of the partners' side. My opinion regarding the question of the loss of intellectual and/or proprietary information is that a company will not share their most intimate technical secrets with a partner or supplier, and I do not believe the company did so on the 787. Every industry that has moved manufacturing to an overseas location has lost a measurable amount of intellectual property, which was the risk of moving work for the benefit of lower cost. The risk of losing technology IP related to the 787 was considered. The company leaders identified and evaluated core competencies and performed risk assessment for each product and partner combination. Considerations were made on what it meant to the company if IP was leaked to the rivals, but in the end, it was determined that information was susceptible to loss, but it was dependent on the partner to safeguard company IP information. I'll take another question.
With all of that said and done, what brought it all back together? What was the turning point? And can you point to any significant event?
Fantastic question. The company increased the number of technical experts at the partners' facilities to help them through their growing pains. In addition, the company began accepting the cultural work differences, thereby helping partners build plans that allow those companies to build ahead of schedule so that they could take advantage of the cultural needs of their employees. In some cases, the decision to recall work became the solution. In the end, success was the result of every involved company wanting to build the best, most technologically advanced commercial aircraft in the world at the highest rates for an aircraft of its size. Employee pride, determination, and customer focus helped the program recover, but then again, Boeing is great at delivering on their commitments. They will not let the program fail. I think we have time for one more question.
What lessons did Boeing learn and what recommendations do you have for supply chain leaders as they consider a global sourcing approach?
Okay, there were some very lofty goals established in the beginning with near-term results turning out considerably different. In the end, and after many years of production, the company will achieve the margins they were seeking. Future ventures and partnerships can benefit from the learnings of the 787. For the supply chain leaders considering such an undertaking, I recommend they do so with purpose, conviction, and most of all with consideration of the cultures engaged in the process. I believe Boeing had a vision that fell somewhat short of the near-term projected benefits. Despite these early shortcomings, I believe the company succeeded in everything it attempted on the 787 for today. Boeing did what they always do, deliver on their commitments with impeccable quality. I want to thank all of you for your questions today. I have enjoyed this time together. Now let's go outside and watch as South Carolina's first 787 is unveiled. Thank you.
Whether it takes 200,000 parts, 800,000 hours of supercomputing time, 3 million lines of code, 40,000 sets of eyes, or 1 million sleepless nights. Whether it's building the world's most advanced satellite, the space station, or the next leap in unmanned systems, at Boeing, one thing never changes: our passion to make it real.
Welcome back to International Business Magazine's live coverage of Boeing, South Carolina's first 787. Thanks to Boeing for allowing us to be on that great press conference. It's with great honor now that we have with us aviation expert Anna Hargis. Welcome, Anna, and thanks for being here with us, and sorry for making you wait. Live TV, what can you do about it? What do you think about the press conference? What do you think about what Kevin had to say?
Well, the pleasure is mine, Brian. Thanks for having me. I am glad I got to be here for the press conference. Kevin did a great job. I've known him for many years, and he's a great leader. I don't think our perceptions of what transpired are as he explains them in all cases, but the main thing is we are here today, and Boeing can celebrate a great success.
So, okay, let's just jump right into it. The idea behind the 787 was exceptional. This global network of suppliers to develop and build an airliner that would be both lighter and leaner than any of its predecessors, how can that go wrong?
Well, all new materials, new technologies, new supply chain partners that were untested. I have to ask, what can go right?
Okay, well, that's a pretty good point. So today, this 787 is finally going to roll out of the hangar onto the tarmac. But it was a very rocky road, huh?
That's an understatement. The expectation was that the 787 would go through test flights in 2007 and then enter into regular service in 2008. However, there were multiple setbacks brought on by supplier failures and material problems that caused the project to fall years behind in schedule. In addition, while the plan was expected to reduce development time from 6 to 4 years and cost from $10 billion to $6 billion, the program fell years behind and budgets were billions over budget. According to Jim Albo, chief of commercial airplanes at Boeing, he even said we would have spent less doing it all ourselves. You live and you learn, and I think Boeing learned huge lessons there.
And Boeing followed, and Kevin spoke a little bit about this, the Toyota model of sourcing, of which Toyota has been hugely successful. What happened?
Well, Boeing built this model loosely on Toyota's supply chain method. And yes, Toyota has developed new cars with shorter development cycle times while being able to outsource 70% of vehicles to their partner firms. Toyota uses an arm's length strategy with suppliers of non-strategic components while utilizing a stronger partnership that those suppliers that produce more high-value strategic parts. This is where Boeing failed. Boeing failed in the details of those supplier relationships. See, Brian, Toyota has complete control in the areas of design and engineering. Boeing turned all that over to suppliers. Toyota only works with suppliers who have proven their abilities over time. Boeing went with suppliers who were untested. Boeing expected them to develop a competency, where Toyota expected a supplier to not only have it, but have proven it over time. And most important, Toyota has a great relationship with its suppliers. Supplier quality concerns are quickly identified and resolved. Boeing's computer-based communication system limited any real face-to-face communication. Boeing did not take heed of any of the supplier quality concepts used by Toyota.
So tell me about a little bit more about this whole relationship thing and Boeing's expectation of suppliers.
Right. Well, let me say first that a network does allow for the sharing of competencies and can result in substantial competitive advantage and increased ROE, but the relationships with that network is key to success. Boeing contracted out the design of components, giving full decision-making responsibility to the suppliers. They did not ensure the credibility of the suppliers. Most were not proven, but given the go-ahead to take on high-level responsibility anyway. The poor relationships then caused problems to go unnoticed for extended periods of time. Often, problems were not identified until they arrived for assembly in Seattle. You heard Kevin speak about culture, and this is where it really hurt them badly.
Okay, but they did some things right. I mean, they had lost a lot of market share to Airbus. They could have simply focused on reducing costs and working on the existing fleet, like the 737 or the 777, but decided to go this completely new innovation route, all because Boeing wanted to improve the travel experience for passengers while improving efficiency for airlines. The concept seemed to benefit all people, and this idea did make the 787 the fastest selling airplane in aviation history.
Well, Brian, you're right about that, but the issue wasn't so much strategy, it was failed in execution. For example, Boeing failed in providing the necessary coordination suppliers needed to bridge quality and sometimes technical skill gaps. Instead, Boeing delegated these responsibilities to its contractors. And remember, this concept is new for Boeing. Traditionally, Boeing's in-house team created all the detailed specifications as well as had in-house technical support that closely monitored work completed by a supplier.
I think the biggest area for me personally, though, is in core competency. The goal of global sourcing strategy is for the company to exploit both its own and its suppliers' competitive advantages. But Boeing expected many of the suppliers to develop in areas they were not yet.
Absolutely, Brian, and this is huge. It is expected in aviation that some level of outsourcing is required. Companies producing complicated products cannot have all the necessary expertise. But Boeing was not new to this. 30 to 50% of the 737 and 747 had in fact been outsourced. Boeing had trusted partners that were experts in the areas supported for those aircrafts. But Boeing outsourced 70% of the 787 to companies expected to build competencies rather than already having them.
So actually, we can say the purpose of outsourcing was not simply to take advantage of supplier competency. It was to keep costs to a minimum.
They failed to realize that make-buy decisions should not be made until after the product has been defined and cost established. Instead, they pushed product definition to the suppliers along with knowledge and, in the end, profits.
The tiered outsourcing approach. It also brought about a lot of risk. Although it is a trend we are certainly starting to see more of these days, building collaborative relationships with primary and secondary suppliers.
Yes, but Boeing's relationships did not extend beyond top-level suppliers. Those suppliers then contracted with Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers, and they were expected to manage the lower tiers as well as produce the various parts and subsystems. The Tier 1 partners did not have the needed knowledge to produce different aircraft sections, much less knowing how to manage lower-tier suppliers.
And this wasn't just a supplier problem, or at least it didn't turn into just a supplier problem. The reliance on suppliers also caused trouble with Boeing employees.
Absolutely. Boeing should have been using the contractor to supplement and enhance operations, but poor labor relations in-house caused employees to really question Boeing's intent. Employees were concerned about giving up trade secrets, and in the end, they were concerned about losing their jobs. Employees began to see the approach as a way to circumvent labor relations by outsourcing as much of the work as possible. Boeing could have involved employees in some level of decision-making, but instead employees were left to wonder if possibly their jobs were in danger.
A final risk which should not go unnoted is that associated with the overall management of the project. Given all the other risks we've already discussed, one might expect Boeing would have established a management team with strong ties to supply chain management, as well as diverse experience in dealing with problems that should have been anticipated.
You would think, yes, but the original leadership team for the 787 program did not include members with any expertise on supply chain risk management. This was a very unconventional supply chain method, especially for Boeing, and there was no experienced management to lead it. To top it off, the most senior leadership moved from Seattle to Chicago, leaving behind what little interaction they could have directly with the program.
You know, it really is a wonder as we talk here today that we are actually going to see an airplane today.
It is, but they have learned from all of this, and they seem to be finally on the track to success. Those lessons were very expensive, but it is what it is, as they say.
Well, Anna, I certainly want to thank you. Thank you again for stopping in to see us and talking with us today. Are you going to head outside now to the festivities outside?
Absolutely. I'm happy for everyone involved. It's been a long, hard fight, and this is great for Boeing and for Charleston.
You're right about that. Thanks again. You are watching International Business Magazine, and we will be back after this commercial break.
Welcome to the world 2116. You can fly across town in minutes or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars, and solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
Welcome back. Taylor, let's go outside right now as the first 787 is rolling off the assembly line at Boeing Charleston.